If I asked you, what was the longest running revolt or revolution of the medieval ages in Europe, which country would you think it was? Well, I suppose since this channel is to do with Cymru, Wales, it's pretty obvious, but yeah, it's Wales. And there's also debates about how long it was, but even at the shortest, we're talking over a decade. That's a significant length for a medieval rebellion to keep up. And that uprising was a revolt led by Owain Glyndŵr, which evolved into a national revolution. This is Benjamin, and that's what we're talking about today. Owain Glyndŵr was well placed. He was descended on both sides from Welsh royalty from different kingdoms in northern Powys, his father's line, through that kingdom. And on his mother's side, the princes of Deheubarth. He also had connections with the family Lestrange, the Norman marcher lords, and his family had fought with Llywelyn ap Gruffydd in the last War of Independence, his family just managing to keep their lands by doing bargains with marcher lords in Powys. But because he had fought with Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, his standing in Ynys Môn was good, notably among the Tuduriaid, the Tudors, which would play many roles later. And in 1328, his family switched to English law, allowing them to accrue greater estates. In terms of geography as well as lineage and position in his life, he was very well placed. He had fought alongside the king in the 1380s. He had been a legal professional in the Inns of Court in London and had that expertise brought back. His holdings in land were ideal to connect different parts of Wales in an early rebellion as well. He did have some lands in the south, but he held the lordships of Glyndŵr and Cynllaeth Owain, near Afon Dyfrdwy, the river, and he held it directly of the king by a Welsh bernry. He had an income of some £200 a year and a fine, moated mansion at Sycharth.
I'm not breaking my foot twice for you.
Poets would sing about his mansion. This one here, it was tiled and with chimney roofs, a deer park, heronry, fish pond and a mill. He was a complete marcher lord gentleman. He must have been knowledgeable in law. He married his daughter to Sir David Anmer of the Cymricised Flintshire family, a distinguished lawyer who had served under Edward III and Richard II. He moved freely in such circles and married one of his own daughters into the Scudamores of Herefordshire. In 1386, he appeared at a celebrated court of chivalry in the same company as the poet Geoffrey Chaucer. I just need a note on the Scudamore family in Herefordshire. They owned lands in Cwm Aur, which is very significant later on, and they do help him in the later stages of this revolution as well. So he was very astute to have familial marriage connecting him into powerful allies all around him. However, in 1399, he had problems with a neighbouring aristocrat, Reginald de Grey, a lord, the Lord of Ruthin, who took common land and called it his own. In Wales and much of these islands, you have common land, usually upland, between lordly estates, which is shared for the cattle and sheep to graze. It's mutually beneficial, and it's good for the ecosystem. But this lord took it from Owain, and Owain tried to follow courtly methods of resolving this, but the doors were shut to him by Henry IV. His appeals met no ear, and his honour felt slighted, and he would have been well versed in the poets, knowing that he had a direct descent back to Cadwaladr the Blessed. And it was prophecy that one of his lineage would liberate Britain from the Saxons. And these poets would have been beating that message home to him. And like any other marcher lord of Welsh descent in the time, the traditional method of resolving disputes of honour was to take the sword. And that's exactly what he did. He raised his standard, his banner, and attacked Ruthven on September 16th, 1400. His followers, amongst them poets, called him the Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, invoking the ancient prophecy to be fulfilled. And they marched up through Dyfrdwy Clwyd, burning and pillaging as they went, ravens upon everything. The response was startling and may have even shocked Glyndŵr himself. The Hanmers, that family supported him, other Norman Welsh marcher lords, and the Dean of Llanelwy as well. He attacked Ruthven with several hundred men and went on to savage every town in the northeast: Denbigh, Rhyddlan, Flint, Penarlog, Holt, or Amwythig, which was basically Wales at the time, but it's in Shropshire now, and at Trallwng. Rhys and Willem Tidr raised rebellion in Ynys Môn. The lesser clergy across the north joined him promptly. The Cistercians in Conwy, Ystrad Fleer, Hendy Gwyn and Llantarnam were also to rally to his side, and the abbot of Llantarnam and Gwent, John of Hywel, even Adam of Wisk in the far southeast, a distinguished scholar and chronicler. This was shockingly national. It spread very quickly into the southeast of all places, the most unexpected place that a national rebellion would touch, and was successful in pockets there. And the English came down upon us and passed harsh laws against us, especially our poets. Henry IV marched a large punitive expedition into Wales along the north, and Owain Glyndŵr fled up into the hills with a band of only 7 followers at one point. But the Tudors were still in open revolt west of Avon Conwy, so that held. And over the winter of 1401, the Tudors managed to pull off a cunning trick. On a Sunday, they took the great fortress castle of Conwy without even much of a fight. We now had a bastion from which to defend ourselves, marking off territory to the west as ours. And Owain Glyndŵr, feeling a bit more comfortable in that behind him, marched south toward Sir Caerfyrddin, Carmarthenshire, Caerfyrddin, and small rebellions spurt up all around him as he pushed south. Caerfyrddin was about to fall. Owain Glyndŵr won a victory at Mynyddygen, near Mynydpymlimon, the Tarfle, the source, Tarfle, of the river Havren Severn. Another victory would be won not long after at Brynglas. This was significant. We were defeating English in open battles now. It wasn't just guerrilla tactics, though guerrilla tactics were certainly in use already across South Wales. Another royal army came futilely through South Wales, guerrillas melting before it. Carmarthenshire erupted into revolt, and England feared invasion of England. Another onslaught on Carnarvon at the other end of the country drove the King's Council to consider peace with Glyndŵr. We were on the verge of winning this war and aware of his growing power. Owain Glyndŵr wrote a flurry of letters to foreigners, connecting with Irish and especially most of all Scots at this time, trying to bring them in on his side. He sends letters to France and Castile and Brittany. People from other nations are beginning to trickle in and join him, not in great numbers, but it's enough to carry a momentum. We're a small country. We need allies from Europe. and he sees that. He's writing in Latin to the Irish and Scots, and in French to the French. He's using multiple languages and engaging in diplomacy. Thousands of local people, led by gentry, especially those of Ynys Môn, flocked to this revolution, and Gethin and Rhys D, Rhys the Black, Dr. Griffith Young would join later. Most of the notable figures of the age gathered around him. He had administrators. And now, battles were being fought on the border of Wales, not as you would expect in the mountainous west, but defending an existing state now. We are doing something new. We have a territory that we hold at this point, 1403, 1404. We recognize that, and we use it to found a state, a Welsh state, outside the control of the English authorities. Troubles were brewing in England. It was enmeshed in baronial conspiracies, which rallied the powerful northern Percys against Henry IV. In 1402, Gwent and Morgannwg were liberated. English armies defeated as they retreated. And Owain Glyndŵr, I guess in some sense of justice, captured Lord Grey and his cousin Mortimer, which is important. Edmund Mortimer. The English Parliament agreed to ransom Grey, paying Glyndŵr, but Mortimer, through his nephews, had a better claim to the throne than Henry himself. If you were the King of England, why would you pay for someone to be released who could claim your throne? And so Edmund Mortimer joined Owain Glyndŵr, and Glyndŵr seized his chance. He married his daughter, Catherine, to Edmund. This was a powerful alliance. And suddenly, he had a boost of allies through Mortimer's extensions. Mortimer's rallying to the prince brought in his brother-in-law, Henry Hotspur, who had actually helped Henry IV. Henry Hotspur flipped to our side, pretty handy, and Northern England erupted behind him in a revolt against Henry IV. And Owain Glyndŵr was trying to get up into the northeast to meet with him. He couldn't get there in time, and Henry IV took advantage of this and defeated Hotspur at Urmwythig, Shrewsbury. In 1403, this was a setback. Glyndŵr lost what would have been a very substantial ally and military force. But 1404 was a bit better in many ways. The castles of Harlech and Aberystwyth fell, giving us a core of territory behind a wall of mountain, far away and supplyable by sea. It would take the English quite a few years to get them back. And the highly influential Dr. Griffith Young joined Glyndŵr during this time. This is when he held his parliaments with the core of territory, well buffered from English interference, and sent envoys to France, Castile, Scotland, building the kernel of a state recognized by foreign powers. The revolution had won. It was now a nation, Wales, fighting England. We were not trying to create a state now. We had created one. That's important to understand. From 1404, we were a recognized state by 3 foreign kingdoms. And the rest of this war is us trying to defend the existence of our state. Owain used the papal schism between Avignon and Rome to further solidify bonds with France. Because France was a major power. France was sending him troops off and on, a trickle, and raiding English coasts. This was a big help for us. He was using the words "by the grace of God" to rule. This divine right was a revolutionary thing during the period, a modernization of the concept of the state, which had taken seed and root across Europe at this time. This was a revolution that was quintessentially of its age, and the thought of 2 universities to be built, on the model of Oxford and Cambridge, yes, but the same thing had happened in France, in Germany, Italy, Spain, Hungary. This was a European Wales trying to establish itself. Glyndŵr's men put an end to payments to the lords and the crown. They could even raise enough money to carry on from the parliaments, they called. Notice that parliaments is plural. This was a functioning state, certainly between 1404 and 1408. Holding parliaments, summoning men from all the tumults of Wales, passing legislation, having foreign envoys, foreign recognition, involvement in papal schisms. This was a religious war within a wider political and physical war. We were fighting on multiple fronts: culture, economic, political, ecclesiastic. This was the last parliament in Welsh history during this time that we would see for 600 years. And at the time of this book, when was Wales? He says it's the last parliament we had because we didn't have a parliament yet. I wish he could have seen it. In 1405, Owain and his allies drew up an astounding tripartite indenture. Now I need to explain this briefly. This tripartite idea was a plan to create a greater Wales and split England into 2 kingdoms between Glyndŵr's allies. It was stunningly ambitious, and it almost worked, or it was a propaganda tool that frightened the English and brought them again to consider peace terms. This proposed to divide the realm, with Mortimer taking the crown in the south, Percy in the north, and Glyndŵr of Wales, which was extended all the way to the Severn, the ancient border claimed by his ancestral prowess. In 1406, the French land in Desir Benfro at Milford Haven, Glyndŵr and his allies marched across the south and into England, all the way to Worcester. And this is probably the last genuine moment when it could have been a climax and a victory. But there's not a major battle that's avoided, and Glyndŵr with his army sees that he doesn't have a genuine position to win an outright victory, so he doesn't risk it. Parts of Gwir and the Tywi Valley and Ceredigion crumbled. During 1407, we maintained our position, but we're now fighting against the odds. Royal armies brought great guns from Yorkshire through Bristol to batter them, though in Aberystwyth, Rhys the Black beat off a fierce attack. Gruffydd Young is able to win fights near Tydewi, but we're on a back foot. We're winning battles, but we're in a defensive position, and this is not good. In 1408, the castles at Harlech and Aberystwyth fell. This was a disaster. The interior heartland, in which we had built a living Welsh state, depended upon them to support a defense system. Mortimer died, Glyndŵr's main ally, and with him, much of Glyndŵr's family were taken. Catherine was taken, see my video on her, and I don't want to imagine the cruel fate and harsh life. A very short life after that she lived. A woman of an enemy camp captured by thugs, basically. And Glyndŵr, with a few of his followers, like Gruffydd Young, Rhys and his son Meredydd, took to the hills through 1409, ravaging as they went. This was still possible. They saw that. The last big raid came in 1410. when they swooped into Shropshire. They were beaten. Rhys the Black, Philip Scudamore and Rhys Tudur were executed. The last big note of Owain Glyndŵr comes in 1412 when they make raids and kidnap a high official. But this Dr. Griffith the Young is still fighting, that's clear. As late as 1215, and Meredith is still at large. In 1215, we have rumours of him being in southern Gwynedd, northern Powys, with a band of Scots, trying to rile the local population back up into revolution. And his pardon does not come until, or he doesn't accept it rather, until 1421. He's at large with a band of followers fighting at least that long. And Owain Glyndŵr vanishes. We don't know exactly what happened. He probably died somewhere between 1412 and 1416 or so. But, I mean, he is an old man at this point for medieval times. We don't know exactly what happened, but we have a reference, we think. Remember the Scudamores? That name's popped up quite a bit, and he's astute, using marriage to bring them into his family inside. They own land just over the border into Herefordshire, which at that time was Welsh-speaking. Cwm Aur is the name of this lovely, beautiful little area in Welsh. I've been there. It's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. What a name. Golden Valley. Cwm Aur, to spend the last days of your life. It would have been bitter though, having known that your whole family had been taken and killed. And we get references in this revolution in the early 1420s still. There's rumours of villages in the central north of Wales banding together under their own administration, sending letters up to the Lords of the Isles in the north of Scotland. They're looking for allies and help to carry on this revolution. And it petered out not because of lack of our passion, but because there was nothing left to burn down. There's no real architecture in Wales of wood that's older than this era, because we have literally burned everything. One thing that's so remarkable about Owain Glyndŵr, there's no Marwnad to him. That's a eulogy. I can't think of any great medieval Welsh person other than him that there's no Marwnad written for in this time. That's spooky level weird. Why? Because the poets were loyal to him. They didn't want the English crown to know that he had died. They wanted the memory to hang on and pester their conscience. It wasn't a rebellion or revolution against anything old. It was a revolution with a dream of something new. It was of its age, when men for the first time of that gentry class were aspiring to classical liberal ideas fermented in the humanities and university educations. May I take this opportunity to say, Diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio, thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you to my Patreons. You do help keep this channel going, and I appreciate the donation. You could also buy me a coffee, leave a super like, anything helps, even a comment, a like, thumbs up, subscription. Thank you. And we'll see you in the next episode.